Alpha Dog stream and Alpha Dogs run with Matthew, Jim, and Bot Lady. Hi, everybody.
Hey,
Hello.
darling. Hey, guys. How are we all today? Hope you're all having a good time.
Nice to be here. So what time is it over there in Sydney, Matthew?
It's just coming up to 11 a.m., so it's nice and early in the morning here. I know it's in mid-afternoon for you guys over there, so timing kind of works out pretty well.
Yeah, it's a good alignment for sure.
And I just like to introduce everyone to Jim. Jim is the guy over at Dev House, and he's the one that is going to be building out the actual physical gameplay and pushing that forward. And I'd like to say, Jim, personally, I've seen some of the work that you've done, mate. I'm massively impressed. I am massively impressed.
Well, I appreciate that. I think it's always strange to have people complimentary, when you're working and it's your job. It's like, well, this is just what I have to do. And you want to almost apologize. No, it's okay. It's not that good, And so it's a strange thing when, people are so kind like you are and complimentary. So it's appreciated. Thank you for recognizing our hard work at Dev House.
Oh, mate, look, I've when I initially floated it to some of the guys that are part of the team that I was looking at getting you guys on board, they'd already knew who you were. Like they already knew who you were. So for them, like one of my guys, I said, oh yeah, I dropped the information pack about you guys coming on board and working with us, and I got about 3 or 4 messages saying you got Dev House. I'm like, yeah, I got Dev House. It's Jim, good bloke. I just got off the phone with him, and they're like, I can't believe you got Dev House. That's fucking amazing. So I want to let you know that you are very much loved and respected, and the work that you've done is amazing. I personally think that it's amazing. So when you look at the progression of the games that you've done, and then you look at Alpha Dogs, where do you look at seeing it short term, middle term, and long term? Just based off the conversations we've had from the technical side, from the AR VR side, what do you have? What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, making a game like Alpha Dogs is cool because there's so many sort of like facets or kind of systems. That's a better word. There's so many systems that kind of almost can work independently, but ultimately create a greater whole. So what's really cool about projects like these, as we're building them, we can build those kind of in pieces to where we don't need to necessarily finish every piece to let people start using it. And so, early on, we're going to be doing a lot of development on like the racing mechanic of like, okay, these dogs need to actually race, and it needs to have logic that makes sense and is appropriate and realistic to how racing actually works. And that's, that doesn't necessarily mean from day one we focus on like, the dog animations. Like, well, that doesn't matter until the actual racing mechanics are correct. So early on, it's like, hey, here's a visual concept of how it'll work, and we can see it working. And so early on with, this community, they'll be able to see like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Almost like, for the gamers in the group, if you think of Mario Kart and you imagine that little mini map, right, as you're racing, yep. It's like you can see that and be like, cool, the race is happening. And then use your imagination for a few months later when those actual realistic 3D dogs are running and you can see the musculature moving and all of that really cool stuff. So that segmented build out really works well for this kind of project.
And I think that I love that you just touched on this without really touching on it. You cannot paint your house until you've built the walls. Right. So it doesn't. The way that I've spoken to you about it and the way that I've designed it has been very much for the actual game is there. It's not something we need to design. It's not something we need to create. The game itself is actually there. The visual sides isn't.
Right. Yeah. You have to start with that. Like you said, the walls, the foundation. Otherwise, you're having a beautiful 3D model that just sits there. And what does it do? and that can look pretty, and that's fun for sharing. And I mean, that's a challenge with some of these other kind of Web3 projects is they focus a lot on the pretty, which is fun to look at. But then if they don't get the other stuff in place, you end up not losing that utility, right? Like what can we actually do? Well, nothing. But look how cool this picture is, right? So. Yeah. The way we're working together, makes a lot of sense. Like, let's build the thing And then as we go, start adding in the paint and adding in the, you know, the decorations, so to speak, and then adding in new systems. Like, oh, cool, racing is great. It even starting to look amazing. Well, let's start to use this time to build in this other system. Let's work on the mini games for the trainers and other things. You know,
yeah, and look, it's something that I when I was looking at it and when I was designing it out and we were writing all down, we really did want to put in a growth factor within the actual game. And you brought up how important is it for a game to be able to actually grow?
Yeah, I mean, for the sort of lifespan of it, it's critical, because you can have a game that maybe is, let's say, like a shooter game that you run around a level and you kill some enemies, and it can be really fun for half an hour or maybe even a couple of days. But then you've beat it, you've sort of mastered it, you've reached to the end of what you can do in that space, and then the fun starts to die out, and there starts to be less reason for you to return. And so you can add new weapons and new maps, and that helps. But with a design like Alpha Dogs, inherently in the architecture of the design, in the DNA of the game, that's there. I mean, you're growing these animals and you're helping build them over time. It's built into the design that you actually grow the game. You don't have to add in a new map. You don't have to even necessarily add in new tracks, which we plan on doing. But it's not even critical, because inherently in the design, your traits are changing, you're breeding new dogs, you're building up this connection with the game over time.
Yeah, and look, I'm really excited to see what we're looking like when we come to our 3D side of things, because I really love the Uber driver game that you did, and the graphics that are in the Uber game. I love the graphics in the realistic game, and all our guys here have gone through your work, and there's guys that really love the drone, the drone simulation, and there's guys that love things. So we look at the work that you've done, and we really can ring all of those different concepts that you guys have already created together for the Alpha Dogs to watch the Greyhounds run on your desk at work. So it really is quite amazing. When you're creating something like that, the graphic side, how much work actually goes into that 3D model for the AR and that kind of stuff?
Sure. Yeah. So the kind of process at a high level, if we were to create, let's say, okay, there's a 2D map that's more about the programming and the logic, but now we want to make it 3D. Okay, well, we need to model. So that's creating the actual polygonal data of what a dog or the ground of the track or a tree in the background. What is the shape of that? And that's a mixture of different tools. Sometimes you use a tool that's more like sculpting, and then you use a tool that's more like creating little triangles to build something. And sometimes you do both. You sculpt first and make it really, really high detail, almost like a statue. And then you bring it through and say, well, this has to run on a web browser. We can't leave this crazy amount of detail. So let's carve off the parts that you wouldn't notice being gone, and let's optimize it ultimately. So that's like the first step. And then you're like, okay, well, now we need to give this dog fur. We need to give it color. And so now we need to texture it. And that's basically putting an image, a good analogy for that, and also ties in UV unwrapping and UV mapping. But if you think of like an Easter bunny, like you get, I don't know if you celebrate Easter over in Sydney.
We love our chocolate in Australia, mate.
So Easter, you have your little Easter bunny, your chocolate Easter bunny, you unwrap it, or if it's Christmas, it's Santa, whatever the holiday is, we always have these kind of things that we have it wrapped in tinfoil, and you lay that tinfoil flat. It doesn't really look like a bunny anymore. It's this weird stretched out image, and that's kind of strange. Well, that's really what the fur of the dog and the face and the mouth and the eyes, they'll look crazy and weird and creepy, but then you wrap it around the dog, UV wrapping, and suddenly, oh, wow, it looks realistic. And so those are kind of the steps to create the initial look of it, but then you have to animate it. You need to rig it, which means where do the bones go? How do the bones bend? You have to skin weight it. So how do you make sure when it bends its arm, it doesn't look stretchy or weird at the joints? There's so many little things that I could probably go on for too long, but it's a
no, it's
fascinating process.
it's very important because I want all of our players to be aware that when we are actually creating those 3D models and those visually models, it's not something we can do overnight. It's
Right.
and you've said yourself, like they might not even work. We're selling if we design them now, they might not even work when we come down to the time. So when I was looking at it and I'm planning it out, and I know we've got a 6 month lead till we have our 3D visuals, it gives you guys plenty of time to grow and learn, and the technology between now and then is only going to get more advanced.
Right. Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, you can create something that if you try to build it all really fast, like an art style, if you try to build all the 3D models, all the backgrounds at the very, very beginning, and you focus purely on art, by the time you finish all the code and all the systems, and this game is going to be fairly complex. We're having lots of systems, and they're going to tie into a backend database and make sure everything's secure and make sure that it's fair and balanced, so you're not losing races for no good reason. And so when all those systems are built, you'll come back to the art and you're like, oh man, well now we found that browsers work better with this new technology, and we should have built it in this, and now we got to rework some of the art. And so it's better to work as you suggested, where over time you're building the systems, which are pretty interchangeable across platforms, more within reason, with like touch screens and mice. Mice, there's some different things, but more or less the systems will be kind of interoperable between platform. But the art will vary greatly. For a WebGL build, you have to be very careful about how you spend your computer budget and your RAM and things like that. Whereas like if it's a standalone desktop application, you can make other choices. Like, hey, we want there to be a fire burning in the background. For probably in this game, there wouldn't be a good reason for that, but something like that. Maybe we want dust particles floating in the wind above the track. It's like, well, that's kind of neat, but on a WebGL build, that's going to make everything else have to lower its quality. So you make decisions based on that, and so you want to be cognizant of planning as you go.
Yeah. So we have a question from Alaire. He asks, will the game work well in any browser and system?
So that's something that we can change over time. So from the get-go, we found certain browsers. Short answer, yes, it should work in any browser. It can't work on any system because some really, really, really low-end systems just are going to be too old. And you can make a decision. You can say, we want it to work on any system you can find within reason. You find something in the junkyard that's from 20 years ago, maybe not a good idea. But you find something that's reasonable, recent. And the question is like, do we support the very bottom of consumer hardware? And we can, but the downside to that is it won't necessarily be as high fidelity graphics because that's a less powerful system.
I think in 2D it should be able to run on almost anything, but when we hit 3D, it's going to be a little bit different.
That's fair to say. Yeah, 2D is not very taxing. You can still, if you're bad at development, you'd be surprised how fast you can make it not work. But yeah, we can make 2D work on most any hardware. But then when we hit the 3D, we have to decide, and it's not an obvious objective answer. It's a subjective of where do we draw the line of quality to capability across hardware. And then to kind of roll into the second question here, because it ties in, same with mobile phones. Some mobile devices are very, very low end. And do we want to support those? And some mobile browsers are even more limited. And so I think as a community and as a development team, we have to work together to decide where do we want that line. And it's not set in stone today. And so this is something we'll work on over time to determine.
The minimum requirements, I don't think are going to be anything that we can really mention until we actually get to the 3D part and we look at that kind of thing. Now, I do think that we will be using the mobile application in the mobile browser that is MetaMask, but I don't think that we're going to be offering any major support for it. I know that eventually and long term. We will eventually have our own AR VR program that you'll be able to, that you guys will release on the platform to allow them to look at things in AR and VR. And so when I look at the the levels of difficulty in this game. Where does this game sit with the previous work you've done in terms of difficulty and length of time?
I would say it's sort of like comparing your children a little bit, right? So it's like, who's your favorite kid? It's like, well, this kid is better at this, and this kid has this trait. So we've done experiences that are very user input heavy, I guess is an easy way to put it. Like, it's very, very the feel has to be just right. So as I'm moving through the environment, as I'm pressing these different buttons, as I'm interacting here, it has to accomplish a certain feel, which takes a lot of tiny iterations. It's very complicated. There's a term we in the industry have called juice. And so, I'm shooting a zombie and it's boring. Well, why is it boring? It seems like this is how it works. It's like, well, there's not enough juice. Like, the gun needs to recoil. There needs to be some flash in the muzzle. There needs to be a blood spray when it gets hit. And so those kind of things add up to complexity and add up to experience, right? Something like Alpha Dogs isn't going to have that same user input fidelity and concern for the most part, but it's going to have a need to be really systems heavy. It's really on the more complicated side as far as like the level of focus on correctness is going to need to be there, and making sure the dogs run in the way you expect them to run when we get to 3D. And and make sure if I increase my speed trait or my endurance trait, that needs to mean something meaningfully, and it needs to be balanced. We have to make sure there's not like a masterful build that you can sort of cheat the system, that like, hey, if I train this trait up, or if I breed these two dogs, no one can beat me. We have to do a lot of testing to avoid that. So on that level, it's actually fairly complicated and pretty high up on there. Nothing that scares us by any means. So in fact, it's the opposite. It's exciting. It's like, yes, we get to really get our hands dirty and show what we can do.
It's really, really an exciting time. Now, Sanguido asked to Jim, how was the team's plan in regards to development compared to other projects that you've seen?
Yeah, so this one, as Matthew and I have talked about a lot, Matthew really, I threw out some project management terms and things. And so there's more like a waterfall style development where we kind of know what we want to build. I'm from a more agile world where my experience is that you always think until it's what's the saying, that the best plan is always there until you get punched in the face, or whatever that saying is.
I haven't heard that one, but I like that one. I do like that one. That's a good one.
Yeah, so I mean, it's that kind of scenario. It's like, we're going to have a plan, and we do, and it's going to get even more fleshed out. And this project, we're leaning heavy on that side. But I'm confident that despite our best plans, we're going to discover, like, through feedback from the community, that certain things are blowing, like, oh my God, this is great. And maybe there's desire for more of that. And there's some parts where it's like, no one likes that. I'm like, oh, we thought people would. And I anticipate that, even though it's not in our plan. Otherwise, it's pretty typical. I mean, we're doing sprints. Anyone who cares about development, you do these kind of 2-week sprints where you say, hey, for this month, we're accomplishing this. For this year, we're accomplishing this. But for these next 2 weeks, we do these steps to work towards that greater goal. And that's, we're doing that for this project as well. It's pretty straightforward as far as our process, because it's the same we use for all of our projects.
And it does help that we did all the previous work beforehand, getting the game dev document done out and having those waterfall sections set out, looking at where we wanted to be in Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. So that's pretty friggin' amazing that you guys, we can just give you the ball and you can just go, right, let's off we go and run with it. Jay actually mentions, says, I don't think anyone understands how awesome the Dev House team right now is for the game. So you've got some much love there from Jay as well. So
thank you, Jay. It's very nice.
You'll find that some of our guys might have already seen some of your work. So I know that today's questions and answers are only going to be short. So get your questions in, guys. Now, Alair asks, do you think 6 months will be enough time to get the game online and working?
Yeah. So are we good to talk about the total duration, Matthew?
Well, we have stated that we did want to go into alpha testing kind of, within 12 weeks from where we're at, and then, do probably, 4 to 6 weeks worth of alpha testing, and then we go live to having a beta version. But I think the timeline that we've got is less than 6 months to get up to beta testing, isn't it? The way that we've got it planned out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's quite a bit of development to do over a good amount of time, but I think the way the question was formatted of like getting to a playable build, absolutely. I mean, and then the sort of complexities and the sort of add-on systems and some of the cooler kind of future nice to haves will kind of come on top of some of these early builds. But well, it's risky to put a hard deadline on something like software development because you always find crazy things you don't expect. The 6 month window, yeah, like we're totally confident that you're going to be, as long as you have access properly and all that stuff, like there's going to be something that you could play in 6 months. Absolutely.
I'm 100% there's going to be a 2D version of the game that you can play within 6 months.
Yeah.
I'm fairly confident that when we start having those conversations around the racing algorithms and things like that. So some of the stuff we've already dealt with, some of the stuff we've worked out and planned out. I think I think it'll be a lot easier for you guys and for us at working together to get this to a much quicker space and in a lot quicker time. So yeah. Right. I'm totally amazed with what's going on, and I think we can have a go into alpha testing probably within I'd love to say 6 weeks, but I don't want to put you under too much pressure, Chip.
Right. Yeah. I was like, maybe, but yeah, no promises. Cause then my team yells at me because they're like, what did you promise them? So yeah.
So, and yeah, look, one of the things I do actually want to bring up is that our timelines that we've sent out are really realistic. They are realistic timelines. They're not, they're not going to be forcing you guys to pull 72-hour days. It's not. The timelines that we've got up are realistic, and you guys have got the resources there to get us through to that space.
Right.
How many staff do you have currently working with the dev house?
Yeah, so Dev House isn't a massive studio, but there's enough of us for a project like this for sure. So there's 15 of us, and we all work in office. I know these days that's kind of odd, but there's 15 of us. We're in Dallas, Texas. We have an office downtown, a really cool like old brick and wood type building, and so we're all there together. And so for us, even though work from home is really nice, as a former developer, I really appreciate the work from home. But as a studio, we found we can collaborate so much quicker. We can sit down in a conference room, or I can walk over and look at what someone's doing and give immediate feedback. And that we tried some work from home, and there was some periods where with COVID going around, we had to. But man, we miss being in office, and so yeah, we have a team of 15 working away at this.
I'm looking forward to visiting your offices.
Yeah,
because everything that we've seen, everything that I've seen about the team, is the office is just immaculate. It really is set out amazingly. I want to get in there and act like a monkey. On the green screen that you got there. I want to get in there and have fun and act like a crazy person. So it's going to be a fun time. It's definitely going to be a fun time. It's definitely going to be a fun 6 months. At least
on my lights, Matthew. I realize it's gotten dark since we started, so I'm I'm black. So give me 10 seconds to go flip a light switch.
You're right. All right, guys. So what we'll do is we'll start having final questions. So if anybody does have any questions for Jim, now is the time to ask away. And I know that, Jim, we're going to be having regular updates with the community, pretty much on our Wednesday Twitch stream, which is at Tuesday afternoon your time. I think it's 3:00. Is it, Bot Lady, or is it 4:00?
It would be 4:00 Eastern.
4:00 Eastern. I know that we've got our regular weekly Twitch streams, and you'll be there for most of them if you're able to get there. Obviously, we understand that we're not going to be getting you in every week because that would be crazy. You've got other shit you need to do, mate. You know,
I gotta build the game for you guys.
you gotta build a game. That's absolutely right. Um, Okay. Yes, Alair, he will. Jim will be jumping in the Discord server when he's available,
Yeah.
and they'll actually both Jim and a couple of the other guys will be active in the Discord, and they'll be in the staff role so that everybody can see that they're well and truly part of the team that we have here. They're not just guys that sit on the fence. They're very much part of it. And for us, it's very much about having an immersive environment for both of us to grow long term.
Yeah. I mean, something that actually brings up a good point to a question earlier about how this is kind of similar or different from other projects. So we have a number of kind of Web3 projects that we are actively doing or have done. And we found that these types of projects tend to be a lot more community connected, right? So we'll build an enterprise project for a client that, there's weekly check-ins maybe, or there's alpha delivery, beta delivery, but they're pretty hands off. We'll do some video game stuff where we interact with our own community, but that's more in like Twitter posts and Instagram posts. It's pretty disconnected. The Web3 projects, there's there's an interaction that's consistent. And so, while we're not always super available compared to, the regular admins and mod team as a development team, we do hop in and we do look at people's comments. Some Discords will even have like a bug channel. So it's like, hey, here's things we're finding. It's like, great. Yeah. Like we're on that. Thanks for discovering that. Or yep, we've seen that. It's on our list, So yeah, we plan to do that for this project as well.
And that's bloody awesome. That is bloody awesome. And it's about building that community and you guys coming in and I know our community is going to welcome you guys with open arms. They're just absolutely going to welcome you guys with open arms. You'll probably get, we'll have you sit in the Discord, for maybe 20 minutes and you'll probably get a list of 1,000 questions that everyone needs to know. So one of the questions that I've asked, and this is one of the questions I've been asked, and this is in relation to the technical specifications on it. When you look at building the 3D, are you looking at building on Unreal 5 or what are you looking at doing there?
Yeah, so we're probably going to go with Unity. So Unity 3D is a competitor to Unreal. They're both, I would say, equally popular. Unreal is a little more typical for maybe the AAA game industry. Unity is a lot more favored in the indie game industry. But lately, Unity has been making big strides, especially with like XR, AR, VR. And what I like about Unity versus Unreal is really good at, if you want to make a shooter or like kind of an arena fighter game, there's a few things it does really, really well out of the gate. It also makes things look really pretty. Just you open up a default scene, you drop a cube in there and you're like, wow, that cube looks great. It has a really nice built-in rendering and material system. But the problem is if you want to do something different, like dogs racing around a track in 2D, that is weird as heck in Unreal. It does not support that easily, and you have to break things. And ultimately, while it does support C++ programming, it's built a lot more for designers who are using what's called blueprints, and it's visual programming. It's like, hey, this node, walk forward. If I press right arrow on my keyboard, connect them, now it works. That kind of stuff is what more people use in Unreal than actual writing code. Unity is the opposite. You can do visual programming, but it's meant for C#, and that's what we do. We're writing code. And for a project like this, like I said, there's a lot of systems that need to be done just right, and we want to be in the code writing, good architecture. So Unity is going to be our best bet for that.
Excellent. Bot Lady, do you have any questions for Jim before we wrap it up?
No, I'm just so glad that I could put a name to a face and, the overall bigger project, and just learning about, what you do is so interesting. And I can't wait to talk more. So thank you for coming on today and just answering questions. It was wonderful, Jim.
Absolutely. Yeah. Looking forward to doing this many more times, and also like sending you guys over content so you can like share it with people, once we have some stuff to share. So that'll be really fun.
Yeah,
It's going to
I
be
know the
very
behind the
exciting.
scenes process is so exciting to witness like the development process for sure. That
Yeah.
you're open and you're part of, like, it's not in the shadow, it's part of, like, it's open. So I think that's a really important thing for everybody to see, the process. And I'm so glad that's how we're doing it. So thank you for being
Absolutely.
here.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
All
Well,
right.
look, we're gonna hold on for a second, Jim, and we'll end the stream. And I want to thank you again for coming, and I want to thank everyone for popping in and seeing us. And you'll be able to catch me in Discord in about half an hour or so. And we look forward to seeing you then. I'd like to thank Bot Lady for hosting us today, and I'd like to thank Jim for being here with us. And we'll catch you guys all around soon.
All right, bye everybody. We'll be back right here Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern on this stream. So thanks again. See you then.
Bye.